Nosferatu is among the creepiest enemies that Claire Redfield will encounter during the events of the game Resident Evil Code Veronica X. A large, bound man with disturbing claw-like growths protruding from his body, Nosferatu was actually Alexander Ashford, the 6th Earl of Ashford, before he would be betrayed by his own children. Subjected to the effects of the t-Veronica virus, Alexander would be locked away by Alexia and Alfred, who had grown to see him as worthless, having no feelings beyond scientific curiosity as he eroded into this abomination.
Alexia.
That is how I dispose of insignificant bugs, said the spider to the fly. How do you wish to die?
The story of Nosferatu as we know it begins with a man named Alexander and his birth into the storied family of Ashford. Born to the 5th Earl of Ashford, Edward, Alexander would be raised in an environment dominated by scientific discovery. His father was a co-founder of one of the biggest pharmaceutical companies in the world, Umbrella, and as a result, from a young age, he would be pushed into the field of medical virology. Unlike his father, though, it would become apparent that Alexander wasn't nearly as gifted in the field. A fact that would weigh heavily on the young man as he'd been raised to revere his lineage and obsess over what he could add to it. Unfortunately, Edward would pass away in 1968 under mysterious circumstances, the Ashford legacy falling squarely on his son's shoulders, who'd so far failed to do anything of high regard. For Alexander, the weight of his name was crushing. With his father gone, he knew great strides within the T-virus research would be beyond his grasp, and without strong advancement in the studies, Spencer would take the reins of Umbrella and eclipse him from the company his father had helped create. However, while Alexander had never thrived in the field of virology, he had some moderate discoveries in his preferred field of genetic engineering, the most notable of which was the discovery of the gene which regulated the intellect of an individual. And so, with this knowledge, he would begin to formulate a plan. Taking inspiration from his lineage, he would recover the DNA from the 1st Earl of Ashford, a woman named Veronica, and plan to resurrect her using that DNA and manipulating the intelligence gene. Implanting the embryo into a surrogate mother, though, he would be stunned when the end result would be twins. A boy and a girl, whom he would name Alfred and Alexia. Alexander would raise these two children as if they were truly his own, locking the truth of their birth away as a highly regarded secret. For him, this had been the most successful contribution he could have possibly made to the family. Of course, there were complications. The intelligence gene hadn't been distributed evenly between the pair. Alfred was only slightly more intelligent than the average person, but Alexia was a genius. A child prodigy who would usher in a new age of glory for the Ashford name. In the years following their births, Alexander would focus on seeing Alexia's greatness made manifest. By the age of 10, she had become a highly regarded figure known throughout all of the laboratories of the Umbrella Corporation. And by 12, she had created a new strain of the T-virus using Queen Ant DNA, which she would dub the t-Veronica virus. However, while Alexia had managed everything that he could have possibly wished for and more, Alexander would find himself growing ever more concerned about her sheer obsession with her new discovery. Alexia would make it known that she planned on using the t-Veronica virus on herself before unleashing it on the rest of the population. In fear of such an event, Alexander would create an anti-BOW weapon known as the linear launcher in preparation. But while he concerned himself with the discoveries of Alexia, it was the discovery of Alfred that would truly spell his end. Left to his own devices, Alfred would begin to explore the Antarctic facility, eventually stumbling across the entrance to Alexander's locked-away secrets. Curious, he would search for a way to enter the hidden room, and once he did, the truth behind his and Alexia's births would be made clear. Infuriated by the reality of his existence, Alfred would bring this revelation to Alexia, and together they would plan to finally make use of their worthless father. Capturing Alexander, Alexia would subject him to her precious t-Veronica virus, learning from his mutations as she still planned out her own infection. Blindfolded and bound, Alexander would begin to painfully change. Large tentacle-like growths would protrude from his body. His heart would become exposed, and he would develop a sort of poison that would transform into a deadly fog upon contact with oxygen. However, while the virus had undoubtedly made Alexander very powerful, it would also completely strip him of his humanity. Alexia would dub her father's mutation a failure, believing that left to its own devices, t-Veronica's potency was too overwhelming. She would theorize that to successfully adapt to the virus would take a much longer, more drawn-out integration. For her father, though, every shred of his former self was gone, leaving only a mindless, uncontrollable beast in its absence. Alexander would be declared as missing by his son Alfred, and after months of silence, he would eventually be pronounced as dead, his only means of impact being regulated to the whispers from the workers at the Antarctic compound, nicknaming him Nosferatu, as his bellowing wails could faintly be heard from the men in their beds. Alexander Ashford is one of the most interesting men that we come to know of on the grounds of Umbrella's Antarctic facility. Born into a life of immense prestige and crushing expectations, he would spend every day striving to make an impact, fully dedicating himself to the honor of the Ashford name, delving into the unethical to ensure its prosperity. Yet, in the end, it would be his greatest contribution that would betray him, his children turning him into a tortured beast, bound and locked away to be forgotten. A tortured soul barely living beyond the nightmares of the few men who could hear his never-ending cries.